Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be showcasing off my quad set Talrasha Frozen Orb Sorceress that I like to call it because it's very similar to the Diablo 2 playstyle of a Frozen Orb Wizard. Now, let's go ahead and hop right into the build, and then I'm going to go ahead and explain things as we kind of go along here. And the background gameplay is doing some Speed Torment 16, aka 75s. So just as a heads up, this is going to be an off-meta build. Don't think that this is the best build for Wizard in the game, but it's definitely going to be a very fun build, and it is capable of clearing all content in the game. T16 is very, very simple, but if you're interested in doing the highest greater rifts, I'm probably not going to be recommending this build. Most of you guys probably are not trying to shoot for rank 1 anyways, but it was a build that I think a lot of you guys did like, and it is very fast because you have the ability to teleport consistently, and the build is just so much more fun, in my personal opinion, to play over some of the other more meta builds in the game. Like the DMO Wizard with the Frozen Orb, it's just too slow, and I'm just not a fan of sitting there waiting for those slowing time bubbles to go ahead and activate and basically having the enemies be in them. This is going to be a very fast build, and it is relatively easy to play and easy to gear up for. So let's go ahead and hop right into the build over here. So first off, it is going to be a quad set build. That means we're running 4 different sets all at once, and it is actually really easy to acquire a majority of the pieces of gear. So first off, let's go ahead and go over the gear pieces, and then we're going to go ahead and go in depth, and I'll explain every single stat that you want to try to roll for early on in the game until, of course, you get augments, which really comes down to rolling off intelligence for other attributes. But let's go ahead and hop right into it. So first off, you're going to want all 5 pieces of Talrasha. You'll be able to acquire these via the season journey. Anyways, most of you guys that have been playing Wizard probably already have this because, again, it's part of the season journey. So what you're really looking for is the Talrasha amulet, which is kind of difficult to roll, but again, you'll be getting it for free anyways. It's just difficult to roll to get the right stats on it. But we're also looking at the chest piece as well as the helm, and then the gloves. But you can alternatively, instead of the belt, you can actually run the pants. So whatever one happens to roll better, feel free to go ahead and swap this with the Talrasha pants instead, and then with the captain's belt. So if you want to go ahead and swap these in and out, feel free to go and do so. But we're also running a 2-piece captain set, and we are running the Royal Ring of Grandeur, so that's going to allow us to gain the extra set that we don't actually have via equipping it. But yeah, we're looking at captain's boots as well as pants, or instead of the pants, you can run the belt and then Talrasha pants. And then we're also running the Guild set, and that's going to give us extra damage multiplier as well as damage reduction, because this build does not run Halo of Karini, which you'll see in like 99% of Wizard builds. So we're actually going to be taking theoretically like 80% more damage, but we're going to be getting extra damage reduction in another form, which actually comes down to the captain set as well as a bunch of the passives and skills here. But anyways, this is going to help out with some damage reduction as well. And then we're also running the focus and restraint, and that's going to be our 4 different sets that we're running here. And obviously running Royal Ring of Grandeur so we can actually run one less set piece. So the build's not super tanky on its own until we get to the passives here. So first off, let's go and finish off the items. We're also equipping the Unstable Scepter. Of course, we need this in any Arcane Orb build. For Frozen Orb, you're going to want this 100%. And then we also have the Triumvirate. This is going to also give us some extra multiplier on our Arcane Orb, which is great for being able to utilize the Focus and Restraint, since you have to cast it anyways to proc your Focus and Restraint in the first place. I'll also mention the other gem slot. I know there's one gem slot that's missing. This is technically optional as far as what you want to run in your last slot. But I'm running the Zystone of Vengeance. You're going to be eliminating enemies super far off screen because Frozen Orb goes super far and then it explodes twice, and you could absolutely just, you'll see via the gameplay, we're hitting enemies off screen and we're basically one-shotting majority of things in the game. Because Frozen Orb, while it does hit super hard, it is very mana hungry, but that's why we have this build over here to kind of mitigate the resource cost of it. So Zystone is great, and then also we have Bane of the Trap, which is one of the best gems in the game, and that allows us to get extra damage, and since it's cold, it's going to make them move slower anyway, so it's really easy to proc that. And then the last gem, it's totally optional as far as what you want to actually run. And don't worry, I'll go into the things that you want to roll on your gear in a moment. I just want to give a brief explanation of what you want to have equipped first. And then as far as our skills go, we're going to be running the Electrocute, the Surge of Power. That's going to give us extra arcane power when we hit enemies. The extra arcane power is just kind of nice. It's basically because we want to be able to proc our focus and restraint. So you'll see in the gameplay over here, we have those 3 stacks of orb, and basically that's all you need to basically maintain throughout the whole gameplay is keep that up the whole time, and when you notice that it is gone, just reactivate it, or if it's about to go away, you'll see right here it's going to 2, then it's going to go to 3. Keep that up the whole time, and then you won't even have to look at your focus and restraint. But I also do want to mention one thing that's very important with activating Electrocute. When you have focus and restraint, the focus and restraint need to have the ability to actually hit an enemy. Whereas with the Triumph, you won't actually need to hit an enemy in order for that secondary bonus on its legendary ability to activate. So just make sure with that little ability that focus and restraint have that you're seeing both of those buffs, one of them being the little yellow one, and one is kind of more of like an orange-red color that you see on like the far right on the buffs in the middle of the skill bar there. But make sure that you are activating both of them, because that's something that is kind of, it's a little bit different with the Triumph versus the Focus and Restraint. But basically just keep this up at 3 stacks and this will be procced as well. And next up we have Arcane Orb, obviously Frozen Orb. It's a Frozen Orb build, so we're going to have to equip that. They're running Magic Weapon Conduit. This is going to give us extra damage, but also give us the ability to actually gain extra arcane power. When we critical hit an enemy, we're also going to be gaining power with Triumph, but this just helps out with our arcane power, because this build is going to be very resource starved, especially if you don't have to roll reduced resource cost on some of your gear pieces, which we'll get into in a second. Next up, we're running Storm Armor, Power of the Storm. This is going to give us a -3 to the cost of all of our skills while Storm Power is activated. And normally, again, you'd be running Halo of Karini, so if you are really suffering from getting one-shotted, you can definitely go ahead and swap that in and out. But via the passives, which are basically all defensive here, it's going to really help out, because again, you're going to be taking 80% more damage, but I've made this build able to clear content relatively easy with the amount of shields that we'll be getting. I also wanted to mention, as far as the shield mechanic goes, getting hit doesn't count as taking damage if it's shield damage. So you can use things like Crumb's Buff Bell or the Helm, where it gives you extra resource cost reduction when you don't take any damage. Next up, we're running Black Hole Blazar. This is a fire rune, just so we can proc our ability with our Talrasha set. So we're using all of the elements. So you have to have 1 lightning skill, 1 cold skill, and then 1 fire skill. And then lastly, we have Teleport Calamity. This makes it so it does a small amount of arcane damage. This is basically just to proc. Otherwise, I would recommend running the Safe Passage. But again, that's for the LOD build, which I do plan to make in the future. It's just going to take super long to gear up for all of those things. But yeah, Calamity, just so we can go ahead and proc our ability with the Talrasha set. And then for our passives, we're running a Blur, Galvanizing Wizard. This is going to give us a bunch of shields. And then Dominance, this is going to allow us basically to face tank almost most of the content. Really up until you get to like GR 100, everything is super easy with this build because we're also running the Ashnagar Bracers. And then we have Astral Presence. This is going to increase our arcane power, but it also gives us extra arcane power regeneration, which is going to help out with the Frozen Orb, because it does cost so much to actually go ahead and activate, because it costs 30 and you want to be spamming this pretty much the whole time. In addition to every few seconds you want to activate Electrocute, just so you can go ahead and proc again your Focus and Restraint and your Triumph. And then we're going to be equipping the Ether Walker. This allows us to teleport infinitely. If you can get a really good Ether Walker, you can actually equip that and then put the Unstable Scepter into the Kanai's Cube. This will allow us to get the maximum value in the secondary stat of the Unstable Scepter, which is usually better, but again, I just happen to have an Ancient Unstable Scepter, and I happen to not have an Ancient Ether Walker. But again, if you have the option, go ahead and swap these out and equip the Ether Walker, because this, no matter what, it's always going to give you that ability where teleport will be costing 25 arcane power. And again, that's why normally this build is very resource starved, but again, I try to make it as easy as possible to basically spam Frozen Orb, because it's so much fun to spam on an ability and not have to run to the resource management issue. So we have Ashnagar's Blood Bracers. This is a huge form of damage reduction, because we're going to be just getting a lot more shields. There's also deflection as an option in our magical weapon. If you get enough resource costs, you can go and swap that in and out depending on your playstyle, or if you just don't happen to meet the thresholds for damage reduction or certain regeneration on resource. And then Royal Ring of Grandeur, this is obviously required. This has to be in here because Focus and Restraint can't be put into the cube. But anyways, guys, That's pretty much it for the build as far as what we want, but I did mention we would go over every single piece of gear, and I will leave the D3 planner just in case you guys do want to read it. This is going to be pretty much relevant until you hit like Paragon, I'd say like 2000-ish, or depending on, you know, your playstyle, what you get for your gear. You usually want to roll off your intelligence for other stats, because if you happen to have, let's say, cooldown reduction on your primary instead of intelligence, that's going to give you extra damage on your captain set, because when you have cooldown reduction, you're going to be actually gaining extra damage. As far as what I'm putting in my gems, I'm pretty much putting all of the topazes over here. That's going to give us extra stats. But most importantly, in our helm, we're going to also want to put a topaz in here. That's going to give us the extra form of reducing our resource cost, which essentially gives us extra damage reduction. Again, because we don't have Halo of Karini, which is a super important item to have in 99% of wizard builds, that's how we're getting around that. And also it technically gives us resource cost reduction, so more frozen orbs. As far as our helm goes, we want main stat, so intelligence, crit hit, chance, and arcane orb damage. For our amulet, you can roll off the intelligence for cold damage early on, but later down the line, you can definitely make better use out of rolling the intelligence for like anything else, but usually you want crit hit, chance, crit hit, damage, and then some other form of damage. You can roll damage instead of intelligence. Again, that's for people that have reached a threshold where intelligence isn't as good as just having another stat, because you have so much. Basically, it scales kind of downward as you go along. And then we have guilds. You're looking at int, vitality, life, and reduce the resource cost. Or instead of one of the vitality or life, you can also get a cooldown reduction. There's not really anything in your build that actually requires you to have extra cooldown. The only thing that you really want to spam that actually has a cooldown is teleport. But again, with our item, the Ether Walker, because again, the inspiration is to be more like a Diablo 2 wizard, where we're able to teleport around super fast. Alternatively, if you wanted to run measure spits, you could probably get away with that as well, but yeah, I would just run this with reduced resource cost. I think it's very effective. Now, as far as Tal Rasha's armor piece, you want intelligence, some type of vitality and or life, and then it rolls default with attack speed. If you happen to get a Tal Rasha that has 5% attack speed, that 2% is actually really nice. So if you happen to pick up another piece of Tal Rasha, or just you want to reroll it, that extra attack speed is quite nice to have. So if you can try to max that out, that is good. And then for our gloves over here, you can run crit hit, chance, crit hit, damage, main stat, or eventually roll that off, and then vitality, cooldown reduction, or your resource cost reduction. Those are all viable options here. And then for our bracers, we're looking at cold skill damage, int, vitality, and then crit hit, chance. And then for our rings, early on, you want that reduce all resource cost, and then your crit hit, chance, and then again, main stat can be rolled off later down the line, or if you want to run cooldown reduction, that's also a viable option. I was really trying to think if this build, eventually when I get cooldown reduction on every single piece of gear, if I can actually remove this for something else, and I do want to try that in the future, but for the most part, that requires so much into cooldown reduction that it's going to take a long time, and I wanted this build to be very easy to acquire. That was the point of making it so it was 6-piece Tal Rashas, and then everything else you can just really craft via the blacksmith. And then we have the restraint over here, and that's the same exact thing as your focus as far as what you're looking forward to on the stats. And then we have Unstable Scepter. Ideally, you want to have attack speed. Frozen Orb will basically one-shot most things in the game. Again, until you get to Greater Rift 100, this build just clears content out very, very fast. And attack speed is just kind of nice to have. It makes the character kind of just feel a little bit better, because in between teleporting and using your Electrocute and Arcane Orb, it just feels a little bit more snappy. Alternatively, you can run the Gokok of Swiftness. I actually recommend that if you guys like the character to feel really good. I just can recommend it just because it also gives you extra attack speed and your dodge chance, but it really just comes down to the character just feeling much better. And because if you get extra cooldown reduction, remember that's extra damage with your captain set, so that actually can benefit you in both ways. But again, the extra gem slot, if you are interested in pushing Greater Rifts, you have to run Bait of the Stricken. It's basically required for every single build. But if you're just doing T16 speeds, which I think that this build really excels at, or doing Bounties Torment 16, this is a really great build for that, and it just lets you clear content very fast. But as far as, we already went over the rings, as far as the belt goes, int, vitality, life percentage, and then armor. And then for our pants, int, vitality, and then armor. And then we were actually talking about this, so I like it for attack speed, and then reduced resource cost or cooldown could be an option as well. Again, that will technically give you more damage. And And then the most important thing with this is trying to get the secondary to roll very high, because that's 100% extra multiplier that you might be losing out if yours rolled very low. The thing that I would recommend you guys to do is actually have the Ether Walker, like I mentioned before, equipped and put this inside of the cube. And then for our boots, Int Vitality Armor, and then our Arcane Orb damage. And then for this over here, the Source, the Triumvirate, this thing is very, 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 very difficult to roll, so don't worry if you don't have every single one of these, but it's always going to roll with damage. It always rolls with main stats. And then you have your crit hit chance, you want that, and then arcane critical hits grant arcane power. That is basically what you're looking for. The last stat, if you can get it to roll all those things, you are very lucky, my friend, but you want that increases arcane orb damage as well. That's going to give you another multiplier on it. But anyways, guys, yeah, that is it for the build. Let me know, guys, what you think of it. I know a lot of you guys that saw it in live stream, you're like, oh, what the heck is this build? It's a very fun build. And again, no one's really playing it. The only build that I think Arcane Orb really saw some play was a DMO build. I never really liked that build personally. And again, the point of this was to kind of give you guys a build that was inspired more from a Diablo 2 Sorceress, which is what I really love to play. If you really wanted to, you could theoretically, instead of the Black Hole with a Blazar, you can run the Blizzard, the Fire rune on it. Because in Diablo 2, you would usually have something to compete with, something that would have like any damage resistance to like cold, because you can't throw an infinity, because this is not Diablo 2 on a mercenary, so you can't reduce their resistances, but it's a nice alternative if you want to. And plus, Black Hole, what you want to use this for is grouping up the elite packs, as you guys probably saw from the gameplay when there's elite. Sometimes I try to utilize it just to make them all kind of compact into an area. This is more so when you are pushing for greater rifts. Again, this is not really a greater rift pushing build, but it can kind of help keep all the enemies clumped up. But everything else, you're seeing, even the elite packs, most of the time we are one-shotting them. As long as we have our focus and restraint up, it just melts things super fast. Unless they have shielding, and then we have to wait for a few seconds there. But I just really like this build. It's a blast to play, and it's very easy to go ahead and acquire. But anyways, guys, that's it for the build. If you guys have any questions, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Or if you guys felt like there was anything else that I can make in this build to improve upon it, definitely let me know, because I honestly enjoyed this build a lot. Again, it's not a very meta build, but I want to go ahead and do a lot more like off meta builds. And if there's anything that you guys would like to see, let me know down below in the comment section below. But I just want to mention, in all my off meta builds, I do want them to be able to at least do speed T16s in like, you know, anywhere from like 3 to 4 minutes is where I consider pretty viable as far as like speeds go. And then I would like them to at least be able to do GR 90s at relative ease. Maybe even 100 is kind of where I'll be benchmarking these, to at least be able to give you guys a build that is still capable of doing things that's off meta, because usually off metas are anywhere from like 10 to 20 behind on the Greater Rift leaderboards, but they're still very viable and they're still fun to play. And a lot of people don't look to push GR like 120s on most seasons, so I totally get that. And I will be making a Chain Lightning Wizard build very soon for you guys, and it's going to be awesome. Again, I like the concept of showing you guys things that people just don't go ahead and cover, because most people are just like, what's on the leaderboard? Okay, just go ahead and copy paste, right? And I want to do that in the future. But like I said, if there's anything that you want to see in any other class, it doesn't have to be Wizard, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll try to make it at least viable for T16 GR, like 90 to 100 at least. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like on it. And if you're new here, want to see more Diablo content, especially off-meta builds. And tomorrow, guys, Path of Exile 3.9 is coming out, and I will also be playing that. And if you guys might be interested in Path of Exile, but you guys are kind of lost on it, I do plan on making a guide tomorrow for that. So if you want to see that, subscribe, turn on that bell, and you'll see more very soon. But thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a good one, and I'm signing out. Peace.